So I've been Maggie's review of Cowboy Bebop sounded really interesting. The way she described it. It sounds like the original anime would be really good to see. And on the way up, I was thinking about all the different ways you could try and get rid of somebody, especially when they're living on the street in Cochabamba for 5 years. And if you had a network of people communicating with each other and I was thinking about this guy Bob that Ron Davis and Diane Bellamy took me to see. It was a bit like when Simon Thornton and Jennifer Hall Thornton, with I believe a hyphen, took me to see Max. After his accident. Max was in a wheelchair, and he was even less impressed with life than he was when I met him before the accident. At Simon's birthday party, go-karting birthday party, we went to an indoor go-kart track. I quite enjoyed it, but my God, it had a stink of petrol because it's all closed in. I mean, you're just breathing petrol from those little engines, 2 strokes, I think. God. Max got accidented, broadsided by a fire engine going down Victoria Street. Shit happens. Like me driving back from an interview at Reading with some network company which had clearly been just set up to psychologically destroy me. And having some guy right on my rear bumper on that narrow winding road up to Bath once you leave the M4. And suddenly coming around the corner the other way was a car full of what looked like teenagers on the wrong side of the road. They were overtaking someone else. And that interview was clearly set up. It was a guy in a bedsit in Bath running a company called Ethical Recruitment. After I told my bank manager that there were jobs but none of them were suitable. And my father, before he went on holiday, left a copy of the Bath, I don't know what it is, some magazine from local people, and in it was this advert for this ethical recruitment, and I was looking for a job. And it was all set up. And my father also left a 12-bore shotgun and cartridges in my room. And after that, when he moved then to Skillgate, while I was at Schumacher College, he suddenly got rid of the shotgun. He handed it in to the police, and it was destroyed, I suppose. I wasn't consciously aware of this, but I remember thinking, you sound a bit shifty when you're talking about this. There was something not right about it. It was obviously not right. And then later I shouted at my mother over something. Can't remember what it was. And my father barged in and said, "Don't you shout at your mother." And then I threatened to punch him. And I asked on my birthday, my 50th birthday, my father sent this weird message. 26th of June, 1966. We remember the day. And I asked my parents to help me. I said, there are people that are trying to destroy the world. They are evil people trying to destroy the world. You need to help me. And all I got was my fucking mother sending me a whole lot of quotes from fucking Jeanette Netherspoon's fucking book about A Winter's Tale. It's been an absolute fucking farce, and it was a farce before that. I used to write to my parents. I used to send them Christmas presents. I used to buy books for them and choose some books, and months before Christmas send them surface mail so that they'd arrive in time for Christmas for them to read. I don't think they even bothered ever sending me a Christmas card. They fucking hated me for some reason. Bob, English Bob, who, as Ron Davis put it, he took a first in, I don't know what, history and something from Cambridge. And he ended up dying of some kind of pork parasite in his brain. And when I met him, he was incontinent and he only had about a few months to live. He was dead a few months later. He lived with a family in El Alto that looked after him. And he'd written books. He'd written several books. And I think they'd been published, so you can look him up. Bob somebody. I have an idea that it was something like Cunningham, but I don't think. You shouldn't rely on that. But the book was Where the Streets Have No Name, because in El Alto the streets are just numbered. Just before I left for Bolivia, I told Rachel Camina, and she said, "Oh, we've been to Bolivia. We have a friend there." And she said, "I said, well, what did he do?" And she said, "Well, I suppose he became loved." And she had this strange expression on her face, not ingenuine, but a strange, pained expression on her face. I often wondered who he was. I think she had some German background. I don't know. She is Alan Camina's daughter. Alan Camina taught me group theory at the Open University. He was my tutor for the groups and geometry course, which I really enjoyed. I really worked hard on that course. I was trying to impress him, and I really wanted him to say, have you thought of doing a PhD? You could do a part-time PhD at UAE. He was a teacher. He was based in Norwich, I think. He taught at University of East Anglia. I looked at Rachel's recent stuff, and it's all good. Sounds all like good group theory stuff. Everything was good about that exam. I wrote to Alan after the exam. I said, I really had a good time in the exam, because there was a question that was just nothing like any of the practice papers that I'd done, because I used to revise like a robot. I used to practice and practice and practice, timing myself answering past papers by hand, sitting at my desk, in order to get into. And eventually, my marks in the exams were always in the 90s, I think, almost always in the 90s or high 80s. And but this time, this question came up about Sylov's theorems, and whoa, it was all new, and but I answered it, and I think I answered it quite well. And I wrote to him afterwards. I said, I really enjoyed the exam. I think I finally understood what Sylov's theorem's about. Actually, I can't remember what it's about now. Something to do with quotient groups. Maybe it's a deeper insight into things. And is it Cayley's theorem about the order of the subgroup dividing the order of the group? And after that course, I got really inspired to write computer software to do this investigation, and I actually spent months on it. I spent months writing scheme programs to allow students to play around with small finite groups. And I was just starting to see a way through to working with using proof assistants like Isabel, and that was just before. No, it was well after I joined the computer lab. Or was it before? There's lots of work on that in the directory of my computer that I left to my daughter. The hard disk of that was just full of stuff. All sorts of stuff. Programs to draw maps. It was all bullshit. Perl script. Tons of stuff on it. Like the computer that I sold when I lived with my parents. After Schumacher College, I had no money and I sold my computer, and the hard disk was just full of stuff. All that work I did on regular expression matching and weird little basic programs to do weird shit. Looking at the distribution of primes with finite Fourier transforms and shit like this. Boy, I was struggling with my tools. And when I left Cambridge, I left Larry Paulson, the entire directory. He's got all of my student notes, everything, for all the courses. All set out in tech. He complained that some of the macros were missing or something. I don't think they were. I think he just didn't look for them or something. I was quite conflicted with that because I didn't want to hand out I didn't want to mess up other supervisors had different ways of teaching, and what I wanted to do was give students kind of model solutions, model answers, so that whatever we couldn't cover there wasn't enough supervision time, and what we couldn't cover, I at least wanted them to be able to look at a model answer and to maybe just to get into the routine of how you prove stuff, how you do mathematical proofs. It becomes a kind of exercise in syntax. You've got certain forms of writing. You say, first we prove this, and from this it follows then that this, and that having those syntactic tools in your head can sometimes actually help you find the proof. There's definite linguistic element in it. I thought I found that much later when I was thinking about how Church's formulation of the simple theory of type, how he proves those first 43 theorems. I'm sure there's a mechanical way of doing it. If unfolding definitions, folding up definitions, and you're looking for common stuff, and I'm sure that you can do Nuth-Bendix on it or something, and you get a proof assistant that doesn't just produce some impenetrable piece of crap, but one which actually typesets out a proof written in English. That's what my goal was. I wanted you to be able to search by taking definitions and unwinding them and winding them back up again, and looking for common goals and doing equational reasoning and doing other kinds of reasoning and doing it all within a form that would actually allow you to write out a really nice piece of mathematical literature which would explain to a student who didn't know anything about formal proving techniques. But when you look at the crap that the whole proof consists of, it's bullshit. It's just impenetrable, useless fucking crap. That whole way of doing theorems is garbage, and I don't know why people bother, and Isabel I don't think is any better. Not that I ever understood it, and never managed to prove anything in Isabel. I proved shit in Hull, but not. I proved some weird fucking stuff in Hull that I pulled out of Hull Light. Something that's an axiom in Hull is proved in Hull Light, and I imported the proof to Hull. I tried talking to Mike Gordon once about what it was you were really proving in Hull. What's the difference between a proof and just a Boolean logic equivalence proof? For example, De Morgan's laws or something like that. If you prove those in Hull, what's the difference between proving it for arbitrary Booleans and proving it for what's the difference between bound and unbound variables and things like that? I couldn't even have a conversation about that with Mike. There was some fucking rule there that you weren't allowed to talk to me about anything. And there was some rule about removing a non-well-founded reasoning from the courses. They concretized everything. And I wonder if it's because of something I wrote when I wrote that regular expression code. I did something that was hard. It was regular expressions with backtracking. And it's got lots of potential. You can do actually recursive regular expressions and things like that. And I just, because at the time I did it, before I went to Schumacher College, I didn't have time to develop it or play with it or see what it could do, except in the most minimal ways. I got a job with Peter Kelway at his funny little company that he had in Ponteland near Newcastle upon Tyne. I worked for him for 2 months, and I built this regular expression package into a kind of PC-DOS user interface package that drew windows and forms on the screen and allow you to have a sensible kind of I/O, which is the kind of thing that I'd been trying to do when I first started working, aged 18, for Marketing Week in London. I was still trying to do it. I was still trying to do it 5-6 years later. Fucking hell. Software is such fucking crap. PCRE. This guy, Philip Hazel, who wrote the Exim mail user, the mail transfer agent, Exim, and I don't know why. I mean, he was nominally a computer officer in the computing service at Cambridge University, and he'd written this book, and he kind of went around the world giving people courses on his horrible little program. But one of the key components of this was a Perl-compatible regular expression library. And what he was doing was he wrote all the rewrite rules using basically a little bit of syntax on top of just regular expression with backtracking and matching and things like this. I met his son at a party once in Cambridge. His son introduced me. I can't remember his name. He said, "My father's a computer officer. His name's Philip Hazel, do you know him?" I said, "Yes." The son seemed like a really nice, switched-on guy. There was bullshit going on. There was a fucking load of bullshit going on. and it might even go back to before I even went near Cambridge. I used to enter these Acorn User magazine competitions to write programs to find all the primes less than 1 million, or find the first 1 million primes, or something like this. I used to send this stuff in, and that one I really hoped. I tried really hard, because you could win a Torch second processor or something fucking marvelous that I always wanted, that would have made my BBC Model B actually usable for some of the things I wanted to do with it, because I was trying to do graphics stuff with it, and when you only have 2 kilobytes of memory after you've put on high resolution graphics mode, there's really little you can do. Oh God, I can't believe it. Fucking. And that stuff that I did at IBM, fucking hell, some of that was shit. Some of that was good. I think that may have been why I went to that interview. That guy, the guy in Reading who interviewed me, was working for some company that had got hold of that had a piece of software which basically put a network work group in network LAN environment under Windows, and at that time Windows had no fucking infrastructure for that at all. And what I had done was a multitasking, a kind of kernel type idea, which you could, without modifying Windows at all, you could multitask software under Windows 3.1. And I'd also done lots of work at IBM. It was owned by a copyright IBM, was code I'd written in order to allow you to get around the stupid cooked-in limitations on IBM PC. But oh my God, that dog's going to get run over. No, IBM PC BIOS was crippled by design to stop people running multitasking software on the IBM PC, but they didn't do a very good job of it. And then one weekend I was at Catherine Yateman's house, and we were lolling around on her bed on Sunday, and I took some time out and just said, look, I'm going to write a little program. And I scribbled down some fucking crazy bit twiddling crap and managed to solve a problem that Alistair Simon had hit. A big problem with the way PC LAN BIOS sessions were kind of inherently single tasking, and we fixed it with a layer on top. And I have a feeling that if you put that together with all those, and I went crazy when I was at IBM writing Intel COF, Common Object Format file parsing software, so that we could load object files directly, because I realized we needed to be able to load libraries and things. We needed to be able to do that in order to get around this fucking thing in PC DOS about the command com loader. I can't remember. It was something that forced us to go and actually go down to the file level to load object code. If you couldn't do that, you couldn't implement multitasking at the kind of .com.exe level, because it's something to do with the way command.com was fired up. But we practically came up with a kind of virtual machine. We were very close with all that stuff. You put all that stuff together, you were very close to a kind of VM running under ordinary DOS or Windows 3.1. I reckon some of that stuff, and I think somebody was, you know, I don't know, somebody was saying, we're managing this guy's intellectual property for him because he's too fucking clueless to do it himself. And you know, of course, we're gonna set the record. It's all gonna be right in the end. But for now, just keep him in a nice environment and use his stuff however you can, and we'll settle the record straight later. I can imagine that's the kind of fucking shit that goes on in Freemasons' lodges. That's why you don't want secret societies involved in anything. You know they're involved if they're secret. Watch.